So now we're ready to layer our quilt top. All right, so to layer your quilt top, you need to have batting. And there's all different kinds of batting out there on the market. I want to talk about them in more of a generic way. There are tons of brands that you can buy, but we use here in the studio 100% cotton batting all the time because I love the way it drapes. It breathes. We're in Arizona. We don't need a lot of warmth in our quilts. It's thin. Most of my quilts are being sent off for display or to the fabric companies or magazines. So it's lighter weight to ship the quilt. It's thinner to store it. Those are my reasons for using cotton batting. Those are not common reasons for it. But cotton batting will also, when you wash the quilt, it will shrink up a little. So it shrinks with the cotton fabric itself and gives you kind of that puckery look around the quilt that gives it a nice homemade look. But if you're looking for something that can be washed 100 times and durable and super, super warm, you would probably go with either wool or polyester. Wool is a beautiful buttery batting that you can use. Very, very expensive, but also very, very warm. Then there's polyester, which is, it's warm because it doesn't breathe as much as cotton and wool, but it is very durable. It's great for kids' quilts. It's great for things you're gonna wash over and over and over, like placemats or runners. But if you want a really soft, buttery, drapey quilt, I recommend cotton. Now, I'm gonna talk about a couple brands only because I'm experienced with them. There are tons of brands out there. We use Dream Cotton here in the studio exclusively because I love the way it drapes and the thinness of it. On occasion, we will use Warm and Natural if we can't get this. Warm and Natural is another great brand. It's also easily accessible. You can find it just about anywhere. The difference is it's a little bit thicker, and cotton batting is made with a scrim. And the scrim they use, it's like a screen, and they stick the cotton into the screen. On Warm and Natural, it just feels a little thicker and like the scrim is a little heavier. I like the lighter, so that's why we do this one. But excellent batting. The other thing you have to think about when you look at your batting, depending on when you buy it, there will be a piece of paper with it, and it'll tell you how many stitches per inch you need to sew to keep the batting from balling up and just wadding up inside the quilt. Warm and Natural and Dream Cotton are, I think, 6 to 8 inches off the top of my head. There's a beautiful batting out there called Hobbs. It's a wonderful batting, but I think it's like 2 to 3 inches you have to quilt. You have to quilt really densely on that. Wool, you have to quilt very tight. Polyester, you can go 8 to 10 inches because it's not cotton and it won't, it's a man-made product. It will lay flat, it'll stay flat. So think about that. Do you like a really densely quilted quilt versus a very loose, soft quilt? All right, so we have our back batting and quilt top ready to layer. And I've gone ahead and I've folded all 3 into quarters. So there's my back folded and I pressed it. I have my batting folded into quarters and I have the quilt top folded into quarters. This is just going to make the layering process much easier. So we're first going to start with our back. Let's move these out of the way. And you open this up on a table, wrong sides up, and you want a nice flat table for this. And dining room table, folding table, whatever you can find, a flat table will work. So you lay it out, and I have so much stuff on my table, I gotta move it all out of the way. And I want to make sure that my cross lines I pressed are in the center and that I can reference them. I'm just gonna lay this out flat. Make sure all the wrinkles are out of it. So then once we have this nice and flat and I can see my center line, just smooth it all out. And even my big table is not big enough for this. You don't want any bubbles or any wrinkles, just nice and flat. Now you take your batting, which you've also folded into quarters, and you align the folds. I want to make sure it's easy to flip open to show you. You align the folds with that center mark. And we gave ourselves extra, so if it's not 100%, it's fine. And the batting is cut the same as the backing. So our backing is 55 inches, our batting is 55 inches. We only needed a 52-inch one. We got a little slush. All right, so now we have that. You saw I smoothed it all out. Then I opened the batting up carefully along that center line. And then I flip open the batting the other way. You see I'm constantly just evening it out with my hand. I'm tugging the back underneath. Just grab just the back and just sort of tug it, make sure it's flat. When I first started designing quilts, we were doing 6 or 7 quilts a week, quilting them, making them. It was a lot. I had my husband and I quilted them all on the little Bernina. And my husband and I had this down pat. We could layer a quilt in just a couple minutes. Now I haven't done one in years. If you had a really big quilt, you want to start in the center, work with what's on the table, and then move it and pin the next section on the table. This quilt's a little quilt, but it's still hanging off of my table. So I will work in the center, and I will smooth it again, and I will push this up and pin the bottom and the top, and just work my way through. Now, once you have it smoothed down with your batting, we're gonna go ahead and put our quilt top on it. But if you had a table and you had jumbo binder clips, you could clip this right now. You could clip the back, make sure it's flat, clip that to the table, smooth out your batting, remove the clip and clip both the backing and batting, and then finally do the quilt top, unclip and clip it together. That's a way to layer your quilt by yourself. If you have an able-bodied person around, you would have one person stand on one side of the table, I stand on this side, and we tug just the back, and we would tug just the quilt top. You do not want to tug your batting because cotton batting can stretch, and then it'll stay stretched for a while, and then it relaxes, and then when it relaxes, you'll get a pucker. So just make sure that everything is smooth and flat. That's the goal to this. So then we take our lovely quilt top. And again, I have my center lines in my batting, mainly because I creased it. I didn't iron your batting. You don't want to iron the batting. Again, it'll shrink it, it'll do funky stuff, so don't iron it. All right, so again, fold it in quarters, center to center. Flip this out. Make sure everything is flat. Flip that out. I'll get on that side and tug it. And you see, we only needed 52. We had a lot of extra. That's fine. You see there's the back, the batting. You want some insurance. So, especially, you see I'm working from the center out. I'm just running my hand across it to make sure I don't feel any puckers or pleats or anything weird. Again, this is where you would then, tug on either side. But we're all set. This is such a little quilt. I'm good. I was thinking I need to grab Matthew and have him help me tug, but I think we're good. It's small enough. And it's also like smaller quilts. That's probably when I spray baste. I don't usually spray baste a really big quilt because it's a lot of spray base and it's really big. But there we go. So we're layered up. This is important. Check all 4 sides. Make sure you have excess fabric on all 4 sides. If you don't do that centering trick, I have known people to they start quilting and they realize they're a 1/2 inch short or 2 inches short for their backing. Again, that's why we have insurance. And now we're ready to pin baste. So to pin baste, what we do, again, this tool, I've had these tools for 20 years. It's a Paula Jean Creations Quick Clip Pin Closer. And I had 2 because one for me, one for Matthew. I never did it alone. I just sprinkle out my pins. Only because I don't like reaching in and reaching in and reaching in. I just take this to the side, and these I can sort of slide across. And you're going to start in the center, or thereabout. This is my center. And you stick the pin in all the way to the bottom, and you open it, or come back up. You want to pin baste every 4 to 6 inches. Just remember, whatever you put in, you got to pull out. I've seen people where they do it 2 inches apart. Now, if you're using Hobbs or one of the tighter quilted ones, maybe 2 to 3 inches, but it's really not going to go anywhere. So in this case, I'm just following the pattern and putting a pin in every other rail. And that will give me, you'll see, just a nice pattern. And again, I'm still smoothing with my hand as I go. So I'm going to get this pin basted. So as I go along pinning this, I will pin one row at a time, close those pins, move on to the next row. On a little quilt, it's easy. Usually like on the table, if it's a big quilt, I'll pin the area, then close all those pins before I move the quilt. That's just some insurance to make sure all the pins are closed and you don't stick yourself while you're trying to quilt this quilt. Do not pin baste with straight pins. You will be a bloody mess by the time you're done. You need to use a safety pin. They have all different kinds out there now that are ergonomic and funky. Honestly, I haven't pin based a quilt in probably like 7 years because I do have long armors that I use because we are a design studio, and that is not my expertise. That is their expertise. And as soon as I could hand off that job, I did, because I would rather be designing than quilting a quilt. Now, having not done it for a long time, I've started quilting a few things and I've decided I really do enjoy it, just not on the clock. So find your passion. If you love piecing, piece. Find someone who loves to quilt and maybe you piece and they quilt and you work together on your projects. If you happen to have money and can afford long armors, they're not very expensive. You're supporting a cottage industry, and just make sure you look at their work first. You know, some samples. Recommendations are always the best. I have a great team that do our quilts. We have Monica Kroom, we have Sue Mitchell, we have Benet Poles. All these ladies quilt our quilts for years. My mother-in-law had a long arm, actually where my studio is now, and she quilted them all. So I got spoiled. I didn't have to do it. But if you enjoy it, you need to make sure you baste the quilt properly. Now, another option is for you to go purchase a long arm and become a long armor yourself so that we can all hire you. And if that's your passion, I would recommend it. All right, so I've got this all pinned up. I'm going to continue pinning it, but you don't need to watch that because it's the same old, same old. And I will bring it over to the machine and we're going to quilt it. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, make sure you like and subscribe below. You can find the Whimsical Workshop on our website, thewhimsicalworkshop.com, and that has all links to all of our other social media platforms. Thanks for joining us.